morning. All right, y'all can hear me okay and everything? We're good with that? Okay, I got my nods from the back row, so I know we're good. All right. So I'll just start with a quick little introduction today, let y'all know a little bit about who I am and what I'm all about, and then we'll jump into it. That's me. That's a lot bigger than that looked. All right. So my name is Andrea King. I'm a board-certified behavior analyst, and I specialize in organizational behavior management. I have a certification. I'm an associate professional in talent development, which means I can expertly assess and implement organizational training strategies, and I'm a project manager for the largest ABA provider here in the United States. So in that introduction, you might notice that nowhere in there did I say I'm an expert negotiator. Yeah, I mean, I've done the research and I've taken coursework. I even have a certification in negotiation and influence from the MIT Sloan School of Management. But I'm definitely not an expert. In fact, I once managed to negotiate my way out of my own job once. Yeah, and this group up here can attest to it because they watched me do it. But before you all get up and run out of here, what I can do today is give you all some resources and really some ways to advocate for yourselves and start out in finding what's going to work for you and how you can really advocate for yourself as a negotiator. Okay, so I want to start out and kind of get to know the room a little bit. I'd like to see like a show of hands what your negotiating experience is like. So my question for you all is, how many people in this room here today negotiated on their last promotion or wage increase? Nice, great. So pretty good, right? Like, and I know I got a little bit like, okay, let's do this one then. How many people in here have negotiated on behalf of their client when their authorization for treatment hours got kicked back from insurance? Right, yeah. And how many of you have negotiated on behalf of your client when a caregiver or teacher didn't want to implement your program because they were like, oh, that's just too much work? Yeah, okay. So the point is, like, we'll negotiate. That's not the issue, right? It's just really about what's at stake when we do it. And depending on who you are, what you look like, how you identify yourself, and how other people identify you, those stakes can be even higher. So that's what I want to talk about today. And I want to talk about that term, intersectional, right? That's the term that we used in the title of this presentation. It's a pretty academic term. It's not necessarily well known outside of academic circles. But Google searches for that term increased by 300% in 2018. So clearly there's some interest coming up in it, right? So let's talk about that. All right, so intersectionality, it's an analytic framework, and it identifies the complex and cumulative ways that different forms of discrimination overlap and affect people. So those are things like racism, classism, sexism, right? The idea here is that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. This term was coined by Dr. Kimberly Crenshaw in 1991. So it's a relatively new term, but the concept goes back much further. I will tell you right now that Dr. Crenshaw has an excellent TED Talk on this topic where she can explain this far better than I ever could, and I highly, highly recommend you check it out. But here's my go at it. I want to start with a little case sample here, DeGraff and Reed versus General Motors. This was a discrimination lawsuit brought to the district courts in 1976. And Emma DeGraff and Reed, this is right post-civil rights era, where at this point General Motors was a fully integrated company. And Emma DeGraff and Reed, she applies for a job, and she finds pretty quickly that there are certain jobs that women are invited to apply for, and there are certain jobs that African Americans are invited to apply for. Right? So this in and of itself was already an issue, but it was compounded by the fact that the jobs for women were front desk jobs, front of the house jobs, not deemed appropriate for African Americans. The jobs for African Americans were men's jobs down on the work floor. So the question that this discrimination lawsuit was bringing up Is there race discrimination or is there gender discrimination, right? And GM said, hey, we're providing jobs for both women and African Americans. But the problem was that the jobs for women and the jobs for African Americans were not available to African American women. By the way, this case, the judge ruled that it was completely unfair to General Motors, that it's not fair for Emmy DeGraffenreid to claim 2 counts of discrimination. It's like, you can't double up discrimination, that's not fair. And she's like, yeah, it's not fair, but it was thrown out of court. This case was thrown out of court. And the judge told her basically like, go back and pick one or the other. And I'd go with picking gender if you really want to get a shot at this. So this was the case that Dr. Kimberly Crenshaw studied. And this is when she realized that if we really want to talk about something, if we really want to address something, we need to give it a name. And that's where that name intersectionality was coined. So if you want to see intersectionality playing out in today's society, you really don't have to look any further than the wage gap. Right? This is a statistic put out by the U.S. Department of Labor every year. And what it's measuring is the difference in pay between 2 workers who are working the same position with the same experience, same education. Right? It's a pretty common statistic. For every $1 that white men make, white women make about 80 cents to that dollar, right? $1 to every 80 cents. This has actually improved over the years. It used to be at like 74 cents, and we kind of keep creeping up every year. But this really doesn't tell the whole story, because as intersectionality shows us, not all women are treated the same. So while it's 80 cents for every dollar that a white woman earns, for black women, it's 63 cents to every dollar. And for Latino women, it's 53 cents to every dollar earned by their white male counterparts. Same job, same experience, same education. So to put this in perspective, we can talk about Equal Pay Day. And this is a public awareness event that basically is measuring the approximate time in the new year that a woman would have to work in order to make the same amount of money that the typical man made in 2018. So in the United States, because it's different in every country, in the United States, we observe Equal Pay Day on April 2nd, 2019, right? So put that in perspective, because we still have another month to go before the typical woman will have made the same amount that the typical man made last year. Just feel that for a second, right? But again, intersectionality teaches us that not all women are in the same grouping. Because for black women, Equal Pay Day is not till May 15th. And for Latino women, they'll have to wait until June 20th. Same job, same experience, same education.